Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another replay cast here on the Alpha X YouTube page. We've got a good one in store today. This is the lower bracket finals of TSL 8. Took place earlier in December between these two players, spawning in the bottom right of Berlingrad. It's our red Protoss player playing for the Afrika Freaks. This is Trap. And spawning in the top left, his opponent, the blue Zerg player for ENCE Esports. This is Serral. My name is Rushi. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate you jumping in and joining us for another awesome replay cast here. TSL 8 just recently wrapped up in the past couple of weeks, and we had some really outstanding series from the event as a whole. I mean, big shout out to TeamLiquid for all of the work that they do to put that event on. Some amazing casters, some equally amazing players, and all the people behind the scenes to help make that an experience for everybody in the StarCraft universe. We, of course, are very thrilled to have them as a part of our community, and we look forward to seeing what other events they put on in the future. TSL 9 when? Nobody knows. Well, somebody I'm sure knows. But in this case, we have ourselves the lower bracket finals between Serral and Trap. I mean, these two have had quite the engagements over the past, few months. Some big knockdown, drag-out fights. Is this going to be one of the tales of the tape where we go all 7 games of this best of 7? We're gonna have to see. As Serral is not holding any punches back here in game number 1. The drone being used to open up the mineral wall here at the front of the natural for Serral. I mean, Trap's already kind of prompting a little bit of a heavy-handed reaction here, forcing the second base out to the third expand. But Serral's not uncomfortable trying to tackle this, as he is very commonly known for going for the early pool. Actually, it was kind of a scary moment there. That pylon was not going to be very well protected, but Serral did not want to undercommit with the Zerglings, so decides to back off and just let Trap do his normal thing. Very easy to accidentally lose all of those links to the Adept that pops out behind the wall, maybe a Stalker as well. So Serral does the right thing. He backs off and sets himself up for a little bit of a macro opening, trying to make things a bit easier for himself. Trap's going to be on the opposite end of that spectrum, though. Is going for a couple of Adepts and dropped a Twilight Council early, and it's towards the front of the natural as well. So not really going to hide this too terribly much. Let's see if that comes into play at any point in the very near future. 2 Adepts, though, going to scout out into the main mineral line of the third base and see what it can find. And it does see some drones. Trap's going to walk away with the information that Serral is, in fact, droning behind his initial push. So that's going to prompt Trap into a bit of his own aggression here, getting the early resonating glaives. Now, again, this is very close towards the front of the natural, so Serral's going to be able to spot this almost immediately. Alongside it, Serral's going to be able to see the influx of production, a couple of gateways going down. The robotics facility just back out of the way, not going to be revealed quite yet. But the transition into a third base is going to be the next thing that Serral needs to keep an eye out for if he wants to deflect this possible incoming aggression. And I think Trap is going to work very hard to try and push some of that information back and away. So far, kind of threatening that he might try and come out with the aggression to push out that Overlord. Yeah, here comes the Stalker. So that's going to be the right call here by Trap, starting to work away at this inevitable vision. Serral going to try and jump into the main base with an Overlord as well, so he won't be caught without any information at all. but I think the timing of everything is going to start to get a little funky for the Zerg player, as he is coming out with a fair number of Lings. It's a lot of Zerglings in the production tab to try and counterplay against what he thinks is coming at this point. I think he's gotten enough information to recognize that there should be an influx of Adepts on the way, especially with the Warp Prism and all of the other pieces that are in the works here. So Trap going to come on forward, does step onto creep. That should reveal enough information here. Serral does have a small force to respond with, but nothing that really shoots up. Those biles will be helpful to try and deflect away the Warp Prism, but enough Lings here. Really dealing a decent amount of damage here for Serral. Trap not able to capitalize on a whole lot of damage out front. Now Queen's going to be able to start working away at that Warp Prism. Trap ultimately is going to have to back off and make it clear that he is not going to be able to continue engaging on this. Drops his third base down. He loses 9 Adepts for the entirety of that push, which is no insignificant feat at this point. So Serral, responding appropriately to the Resonating Glaive's timings, continue working on his creep spread. In fact, wow, this creep's really far out in the center of the map. There is an observer, so Trap should be able to start working away on that creep, but he keeps more than enough of his Zerglings back at home to deflect the Adept harassment as well. So what Trap's trying to throw at the Zerg player is not finding the kind of damage that Trap was hoping for, and it reflects a little bit in the supply as well. 85 to 99, but Trap's not discouraged here. Building units out of his robotics facility. Ooh, nice little catch here, protecting his sentries from the Zergling run-by going into the third base location. Is going to spot out that Trap is just now finishing up his third Nexus, so he's not entirely all in on this this push. In fact, he does need to find a way to continue doubling down on his economic standpoint. Because right now, Serral is slowly starting to grab a little bit more control here in the early onsets of this game. We're at about the 7-minute mark, and Serral is starting to grab a really strong hold on his economy. He's going to be able to start transitioning as well. Aspire just goes down. Trap with very good vision, though, utilizing the Observer here to try and keep track of where that main army is rotating towards, plus also picking off a little bit of the creep spread, which is coming very far forward on the map, just eclipsing now past the center. And that does keep things a little bit more open here for the Zerg player. I mean, despite the fact that his creep is getting pushed back, he is going to start transitioning into some air units. More than likely, we will see some mutas coming into play. Could possibly force out Phoenix or two if Trap is able to jump on top of the information. But right now, Hallucinated Phoenix not going to be able to get into that main base. So it's possible that Trap is not going to be anticipating this at this current point. All in all, though, I mean, it should just be, I mean, it's not even a single Stargate at this moment. So the call to go Spire, smart play here by Serral. Mutas are going to be a nice mitigating force to harass, but also it catches Trap in a little bit of a transition. Either he's going to have to warp in an inordinate amount of Stalkers to try and deal with this, or he's going to catch his opponent trying to get into Stargate tech, and then Serral can just pounce on the fact that you have as many units as you otherwise would have. Especially since you're going very heavy into the Immortal Sentry Soccer composition here. This Warp Prism really hasn't found a whole lot of damage. +1 missile just now finishing up here. We do have Banelings on the production tab, a lot of Roach Ravagerling Bane as a composition right now. It is slowly going to transition into those mutas. As the mutas are going to pop out, I would be surprised if the Muta went and harassed the Warp Prism. I don't think that that's going to be the case until the Mutas are officially shown on the map, which could possibly be now. Phoenix has infiltrated into the natural and has found a couple of units that might be of the flappy variety. Yeah, but instead, Mutas are just going to dive right on into the main, and this is going to cause some problems. No shield battery here at the main, so if there were enough Mutas, there could be a decent amount of harassment here onto that cannon, but I don't think that's going to be the case here. Blink Stalkers should be able to chase this away and not want to overthrow. Look at the supply difference here. 200 to 125. Serral's at a point where he should just be able to push on forward and ultimately maybe even a move, but I think he'll just coordinate an attack here. Third base location is rather secured. Serral has information that the fourth base has not gone down just yet, at least not at the orthodox locations. Trap's been a little bit behind on his upgrades. Charge only now finishing up, and he's only at +1 on his ground units. But Serral's currently not going into his +2 missile, so not a major concern for Trap in this moment. I think the bigger concern, though, is this engagement here. The units are going to be able to cascade in from every single angle. There's just so many Banelings, and even if they don't connect efficiently, it just doesn't matter. There's just so many units to try and maneuver through, and now the Roach Ravager is going to be able to come in from behind and clean everything up, and now suddenly Serral able to slam down the Z key. 42 Zerglings on the production tab as those are going to come streaming out. There's still Banelings available. Trap has not done enough to be able to mitigate the follow-up push here, as this should be a warning call for him here in game number 1. 175 to 113. The shield battery overcharged, the final bastion of hope for the Protoss player, but that will be quickly disposed of. Ooh. Yeah, there it finally does end up going down. It does force a push back, but the Zealots on the attack on the other side do meet their fiery end with some Banelings. So now Serral should be able to just shove on forward here, and we will be looking at a Zerg victory in game number 1. Serral takes the upper hand in this best of 7, goes up 1-0 in the series. Game number 2 takes us to Glittering Ashes as Serral jumps up in the best of 7 1-0. Now, we have seen plenty of scenarios where one of the players takes a quick lead and people are already starting to make insinuations. Oh, this player's never been beaten when at this position in 1-0 position on a best of 7. But certainly not the case for both of these players. We've seen the scrappiest level of play from both Trap and Serral in a multitude of scenarios. And a 1-0 advantage, definitely not going to make any either one of these players play in a different way. Now, what might present itself, since it is a best of 7, I mean, both players could very easily pull out some really fun builds here. I mean, this is TSL 8, so the crowd hype behind all of these different series does carry a certain level of flair. And if you know that you've got a few tricks up your sleeve to give yourself a little bit of an advantage in the series and make it a good game for the fans, you know what I'm saying, definitely could find itself into these series. So Trap going to switch things up here in game number 2, goes into a Stargate opening. It appears that Serral will just tackle a typical 3-base opening here. Once again, being forced out to the third base location. Didn't seem too bothered by it in the opening onsets. Just immediately meeting that pylon down at the natural and giving it the little wave, and it's like, yo, what's up, man? Oh, I'm just here to block your base. I know. Work's rough, right? Gotta pay the bills. And the drone just heads on out. So, not going to be something that overwhelmingly frustrates the Zerg player. We'll be able to make adaptations as needed. But it does have an impact. And if we can see very early on, I mean, small income victories do turn into larger advantages down the road. And Trap's able to capitalize on early game victories. Those could turn into mid-game victories, and it could turn into late game victories. So it's always worth it for the Protoss player to try and take advantage of those small moments to gain just a little bit of an advantage. Another opportunity, taking out that forward overlord, limit a little bit of the scouting that comes into play here. Trap's going to follow up with his Oracle, so this is not going to be as concerted of an airplay, at least for the early onset. Seems as if Trap's going to want to continue moving towards a ground-based army. Does drop a second gateway in the wall. Possible follow-ups could include that Twilight Council Forge combo very, very soon. But we do see an interesting choice here. Good. Oh, okay. Yeah, good scout by Serral, but Trap with a little bit of mind games cancels the +1 upgrade, brings it back in. Serral coming back in for the scout once again. We'll see that is in fact coming into play. So Trap will want to go into more air units. He does drop down the second Stargate, and this is Trap trying to mix things up, but is trying to get a little mind gamey with his opponent. Starting and stopping this upgrade, but Serral ultimately getting the information that he is looking for. So as a response, oh, Queen's going to be able to jump on top of the Oracles. Very, very nice harassment here by Serral, limiting the amount that Oracle can get in. So as a response from the Zerg player, getting into a lair, going to be able to manipulate his army here. Wouldn't be surprised to see +1 missile started in the evolution chamber sooner rather than later. Roach Warren is going to be coming down as well. More than likely, I mean, this is a pretty strong Queen Walk map. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Queen Walk take place here. The Queen count is on the rise. I think it currently sits at, what, 6? 6 and 4 of them on the run already. I mean, there is a pretty strong timing window if you are the Zerg player where you can get across the map with Roach Ravager and try to beat up your opponent before they can hit that massive amount of Void Rays that just becomes unbearable to deal with. It just comes down to the timing of such. I mean, this already kind of makes it interesting. Going for a Spire, possibly eliminating the Queen Walk potential, but Queen production continues to rise. 3 more Queens in production to join the 7 that are already on the map. It's like Serral trying to go for some options here. A Fleet Beacon, a 3rd Stargate. We will see some carrier production get started here very, very soon. Wouldn't even be surprised to see Flux Veins brought into the map as well. The Infestation Pit coming down, and it seems like both players trying to rush as quickly as they can to their tier 3 tech so that they can get into the late game as early as humanly possible. Serral's 4th base finishes up here. The creep spread a little bit limited this time around, but has sufficient vision outside of the front of his base. So he will more than likely feel at least a little bit comfortable trying to protect. The carrier production has already started here for Trap. I mean, if you're able to capitalize on your opponent's lack of harassment in the early onsets of the game, you can easily jump forward and get that Fleet Beacon down and start utilizing those saved resources to get your carrier count on the run. And with 3 Stargates pumping out carriers, that will very, very slowly but very quickly start to capitalize on a moment for a Trap. Very slowly but very quickly. That's just not what... Okay, anyways. All right, Serral has the information that he is seeking here. He is going to come out with Corruptors. And as Trap is able to secure his 4th Nexus, this is now just really advancing itself into the later stages of the game. We're at the 7-minute 50-second mark. 17 Corruptors, though, not an insignificant number. And against the number of Void Rays here, there's only 4. I mean, if you pair the Queens with those Corruptors, that's going to be very difficult for Trap to try and attack into, especially if Serral is going to start moving across the map. And it does look like that appears to be the case. Queens are going to start posturing forward here at the front side of the creep, and that's going to be a very quick walkway into that natural location. There is a Disruptor, but 1 Disruptor is not going to make a very scary force here. 2nd Disruptor does sit out at that 4th base location, so that does provide enough of a concerning issue. Trap, though, should be concerned with the army that is sitting just outside of observer vision. He does have vision of it now, and we'll see that this army is on its way. So how do you respond as Trap? You really don't have a whole lot to anchor set yourself down with. Immediately, extra shield batteries going down at that 3rd base location. These Zerglings come streaming in, and now it's just a buy for time. Corruptor's immediately going to start working on this air army as they go for those valuable units. The shield battery overcharge, an absolute must here at this point. The queens have all arrived. The units are now just streaming across the map. And does Trap have enough here? Serral's got 198 supply here. He has outmaxed his opponent by 50 in the army supply count. But carriers can be spooky in large enough numbers. But right now, 21 workers have gone down. The Zerglings uncontested in the main base. Trap does not have enough. And Serral able to capitalize on the Protoss player's greed. He goes up 2-0 in this best of 7. Trap a little bit slip slidey as he navigates himself into game number 3. Game number 3 underway here on Pride of Alteris. Trap looking to try and bring himself back from an 0-2 deficit. Opening up here, Serral jumping out to the gold base expansion. We've seen a lot of players try to take advantage of the early economic advantage of this gold base, and sometimes difficult to punish if you are a player that has a difficult time getting your unit count up in a timely manner. Trap going to try and do what he can to stop this, although he might just stay his own course here, getting his Nexus before Cybercore. Pretty standard style opening, but he does have the information that he can start focusing on harassing at this forward location. Serral going to eat a little bit of his efficiency on the forefront here as he transfers his worker count out. But other than the initial information, I mean, Serral's not looking to really get punished for his endeavor. We'll be able to start immediately mining. Very clever timing of his workers. But that income advantage will very quickly, as we watch that graph slowly start to create, starts to jump into the blue Zerg player's favor. Now, as a response, Twilight Council is going to go down almost immediately. And that feels like the right call for Serral in this regard. He has an opportunity to be able to get adepts out onto the map with some pretty quick haste and may want to capitalize on that as well. It's very possible that a Stargate might just be a bit too slow. And when you have the harassment potential of a base that's so far away from the main and the natural, I mean, it's a pretty decent distance, all things considered. You definitely want to take advantage of that. Robotics facility in the production tab as well. Let's see if there's going to be a specific tech that comes out of this. It will be resonating glaives once again. And we see Serral just capitalizing on the macro opportunities here. If we look at that income advantage once again, it is small, but very, very useful here. Again, if you can make wins happen early on in the game, sometimes those turn into mid and late game wins, and that is what Serral is hoping to capitalize on. Trap, though, understands the situation, trying to get into his production as quickly as he possibly can, throwing down 3 additional gateway, giving himself a 4-gate position. Robotics facility will be coming out with the warp prism as well. Going to toss down an additional gate as well. So 5-gate, 6-gate. Trap going up to a very aggressive position, and I think that's the right call at this point. You, as the Protoss player, really want to shut down the Zerg player's ability to utilize this base. Picking off that base not only gives you a better advantage in the early stages of this game, but also limits your opponent's ability to continue producing units, as that will be an entire hatchery gone as well. So the Twilight Council just about to finish up here. Resonating glaives ticking on the clock. That will be completed here. It's continuously 4-gate production right now. The 5th and 6th gate still working on producing. But Trap is just going to ignore that gold base altogether, assuming that Serral is going to be posturing up here. The Queens now all out of position, and Trap in a very scary position to attack and strike. But look at these units. Roaches already popping out for the Zerg player. Queens on the ramp as well. So now Trap kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. Not exactly sure where to attack. He's going to try and rotate his aggression out to the mineral base expand. Roaches are a good response here by Serral to try and deal with the harassment potential of these adepts. But Trap doesn't have a whole lot really to play with. Serral already 52 army supply to the 33 of Trap. These units are slowly being dealt with, but adepts are pretty sturdy and they can overwhelm if given time to do so. Two of the queens do end up falling. Will these adepts be able to find additional damage? They shade on into that natural expand, but will not find any workers. No economic damage at this point. This is a very, very crucial note to make. Trap's going to try and shade up into the main base, but will not be able to make that happen. And Trap is still looking for economic damage. Right now, very important, no workers have been killed. And as the Protoss player, you really want to try and find some economic damage to make all of these sacrifices worth it, because third base still has not gone down for the Protoss player. Adept's going to try and find their way up into the natural once again, only to be met by roaches and zerglings as well. Serral with a very strong hold here, 98 supply to the 72 of his opponent, and every minute that goes by at this point is a stronger minute for Serral and a weakening moment for Trap. Additional warp ins here with the warp prism as Trap's going to try and queue up a little bit of split aggression, getting into the mineral lines of both of these bases to make things happen. But there just hasn't been any drone production at all. It's been all units all the time, and the adepts are now actually going to try and completely group up at the third base location. The queens are going to get picked away. There is an immortal now as a part of this fight, but is the immortal going to get far enough forward to really be a valuable asset to the Protoss player? It does not appear that that will be the case. Roaches will be in high enough supply. They pick off the immortal, and now roaches will be able to shove things back. And Glial Reconstitution finishing up here in the next 10 seconds will make these roaches hit back harder than even before. The follow-up immortal available for this defense, but it's not much of a defense here. Roaches will be able to overwhelm now with Glial Reconstitution. A second immortal is a good place to fight from, but are there enough units to really soak up the damage? I don't think so. Immediately getting tapped down, and Serral on the verge of a 4-0 sweep over his Protoss opponent. Can Trap rescue back any games, or could he possibly reverse sweep? Find out in game 4. Game number 4 underway here on 2000 Atmospheres, and the red Protoss player Trap in trouble right now. Currently sitting on match point against his opponent. Needs to win 4 in a row if he wants to advance on to the grand finals of the TSL8 event. And he's had a difficult go at it with his opponent. Serral seems to have been very, very well prepared for this series between these two, dialing up some very, very appropriate pressure, doing a nice job of deflecting the incoming aggression of his opponent. And Trap has not had some very good responses to Serral's playstyle in this series, but he'll persevere on. Has an opportunity to continue winning some games, might be able to wrestle himself back with game number 4. And on 2000 Atmospheres, there are some opportunities to capitalize on a strong map for the Protoss player. All in all, though, opening remains unchanged. Nexus before Cybercore, capitalizing on a little bit of an economic opener. Serral actually able to get his hatchery down at the natural. Biggest change here in the series so far. That means Trap's going to be able to try and keep tabs on when that third base is going to go down. Lings are going to try and deflect a little bit of that information. It will be a Stargate in game number 4 for Trap. Pylon tries to block at the third base location, but will only be canceled. Not worth it to lose all 100 minerals. 25, though, is a fair sacrifice. Serral is going to do his best to work with a little bit of scouting information. We'll be able to get up in and see that Stargate with his Overlord. Overlord on a ticking clock right now, as the Stalker will be in hot pursuit. It is an Oracle open, all things considered, so Trap gonna try and find some increased harassment damage with his opening here. Got to give Trap a lot of credit. He is trying multiple different openings against the Zerg player, not giving up or falling into a rut. But of course, that's iconic of the Protoss player. Trap has always been a very resilient competitor, not allowing any adversity to really get him down. Fights through and has come forward with a fair amount of victories and wins, albeit some small, some mighty, some major. He capitalizes nonetheless. His big dreams for this Oracle. Oracle already, though, harassed down out of his shields. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Does have his third base up, though, so pinning his opponent back at least a little bit. Second Oracle will be swinging in from the high side, and I think that's going to be the Oracle to keep an eye on. Will not have the advancement into the mid-game air units, though. Throws down a Forge, throw down a Twilight Council. Oracle's now going to convene here in the main base. Serral with some good map awareness here, trying to stay on top of the harassment. And I don't think there was a single worker killed there. One. No worker kills. Very good deflection here by Serral. Starting to work out his lair. Lair just a tiny bit behind. Roach Warren does now finish up as well. There's the evolution chamber, so +1 more than likely on the way. And we will get some Blink Stalker +1 attack action out of the Protoss player. So Trap going to go for a more traditional meta here in game number 4. Wants to try and utilize what has been popular amongst Protoss players here in the current landscape of StarCraft 2. Getting into a little bit more disruptor or Colossus-oriented play. Ooh, but look at this production jump. 6 Gateway. Looking to overcharge his production, getting those additional buildings up. No gas is out at the third base just yet, so could possibly see a large amount of zealots being brought into the mix in the short term. Right now, though, they're going to stay focused on that Stalker count, as Blink is about 2/3 of the way done. But that means Trap is going to have an opportunity to try and be aggressive here in the middle stages of this game. Wants to try and find a little bit of economic damage, though. Serral with just some very quick maneuvering here of his drones, limiting the amount killed here. That's just one drone that has gone down for so much investment in time and micro for the Protoss player. All in all, though, Phoenix going to be able to spot a little bit more information. Trap feels like his time to strike is now, but look at the disparity here. 66 to 46. This would be a decent amount of damage, and he's going to grab all of the drones here into the natural mineral line. Will prompt a bit of a response here by Trap. He wants to start getting a little bit more damage done. That's something that he has not been able to capitalize on in previous games, and Trap wants to find a little bit more damage now with his Blink Stalkers. Blink Stalkers going to start picking away, but again, not finding any major economic damage. Economic damage actually is still pretty good here for Trap. Serral only now finally getting to re-rally his workers into the mineral line. A couple of units on the right-hand side will be able to flank out some of these queens, and getting a little bit of extra damage here is going to be Trap. This is going to be an okay exchange for him in the long run. We'll be able to get those larger, more expensive units and ultimately comes out a little bit more efficient than his opponent, and he still has push potential. The Warp Prism here now able to get additional warp-ins and on a decent amount of warp gates here. 8 gate in total. That means this base is now going to be very, very exposed. There isn't enough Zerg here to really push this back and away. The Stalkers just continue to blink as well. That will finally get tapped down. Additional Zealots get brought into the mix here. A Hydra Den alongside a Lurker Den is the response by Serral. And now it becomes Trap's game to try and wrestle back a little bit of map control. 153 to 125. It's a bit of a concerning number disparity here for the Protoss player, but Trap does not feel too terribly concerned at this moment. Working to get his 4th base up, though, is going to be a bit more of a problem. Overlord here going to be spreading a little bit of creep, so that will delay things out, and Serral has vision of that follow-up 4th. So Serral, once again, able to be a bit more greedy, a bit more controlling, just because of his ability to scout and have very reliable information on timing and whereabouts of Trap's army. He's going to be able to rebuild that 4th base as well as get his Lurker upgrades, Lurker range on the menu first. Trap has done a really good job of keeping the income advantage very, very close to the center. It's about the best way that the Protoss player can deal with things right now. But Serral has other things in mind. He's got a Nidus network on the way, going to try and utilize those Lurkers in very aggressive and offensive formats. He does have an Overseer in the backside of the main base of Trap. There are pretty decent coverages on vision, so I don't know if Trap's going to really fall too terribly victim to this, but it will still be a bit of a nuisance to deal with for sure, as the first Nidus Worm is going to go down. This is a big engagement here outside of the 4th base location. Trap does need to be careful here. Corrosive Biles can very easily eat away at his army. Is going to do a little Zealot run by at what would be a 5th base location and not really find a whole lot, but there's been no response to this Nidus Worm. The Lurkers are just going to come on in, and what is going to be there to stop all of this aggression? Now, Serral does have problems back at home. There is going to be a pickoff of that Nidus network. Okay, that Nidus Worm is not going to die there in the main base. So those units are just going to continue causing chaos and problem, but the Stalkers have yet to have been dealt with back on the other side of the map here for Serral. 12 probes have gone down as a result, though, and the Lurker count still is being taken care of. Trap will be able to clean that up, but it does come at pretty decent cost of his economic position here. And Serral now jumps ahead 173 to 118. Just enough Lurkers back at home to mitigate the damage that Trap was able to deal. Serral's comfortable losing out on this base given the position that he put himself in with the harassment on the other side of the map. He picks off a decent amount of workers, picks out a little bit of the technology as well. He still has a worker advantage on top of it, 59 to 50. It's not a major economy, but it is better than his opponents, and Trap is having a difficult time trying to rotate. He is going to be able to get some workers out at this 3 o'clock position base, but Serral's already rotating around. Immortals will start working out on the Roach count. Giant blink forward to try and keep this army at bay as well, and Trap will try to capitalize on a little bit of chaos, but units already running into the natural base. That's so many workers that have been pulled off of the front line. The wall has been breached, 2 gateway depowered, and Serral is going to start working away at this economy and production of Trap. Trap's having a difficult time really trying to deal damage on both fronts. The army's been cleaned up on the other side of the map. These roaches are still dealing a great amount of damage back at home for Trap. Trap's going to have additional warp-ins, but what does Trap have to follow this up with? He's down in Nexus. He's down additional production. He's down in supply in a major, major way, 132 to 77. If we take a look at the units lost tab, it's almost dead even on the mineral count. The gas leans very, very heavily into Serral's favor as Trap has lost a significant amount more. Serral's going to be able to punish this third base, or this fourth base as well, and this is starting to look a little grim for the Protoss player. What can Trap do to get himself back into this game number 4? He's on the verge of falling off to his opponent 0-4 in the bottom bracket finals of TSL 8. Trap picks off yet another Nidus Worm. He will be able to clean up the base at the 9 o'clock position. So Serral doesn't have an insane amount of mining really to work with. There isn't really a whole lot happening for Trap either. Trap has nothing on the production tab at the current conjecture. Serral out to his tier 3 tech. He is going to pick up some Vipers. There's a Warp Prism in the top left-hand corner. These Hydras will see to its demise, so that's going to have to be recalled out. There it finally goes. And Trap now has some decisions to make here. He has to figure out what he's going to do to really rescue this game back from the brink. Trap barely holds on, but he's holding on to not a whole lot. 161 to 89. If you're the Protoss player, going into the robotics facility seems like a possible major option here to try and deal with the large count of roaches, but the lurker count continues to grow. Disruptors not on the menu. There is no robotics bay. Oh, there it is. Okay, there's a robotics bay. No disruptors on the menu. Disruptors is a pretty good response to lurker play, but Trap not feeling comfortable enough to go into that position at this point. So now it's Serral rotating around and Trap trying to warp in as much as he possibly can here, but the supply does not lie. 176 to 107 makes this a very difficult place to try and play from if you're the Protoss player. So trying to find any possible damages you can is crucial. And at this point, catching some army out is a valuable win for the Protoss player, as it seems like he wants to try and continue doing that. A really good storm onto the army. Choked up on that bridge, and that was a decent amount of damage, but I don't know if that's going to be ultimately enough. Little lurker run by going to completely kill the Nexus here at that 4th base. And there's just not that much waiting back at home to defend against these lurkers. Enough Immortals here could pose a very interesting army engagement, but now we're getting some Viper pulls, pulling these Immortals away from the security of the high ground and the singular Archon that has been allowed to aid in the offense. There's just nothing really here to deflect the damage back at home for Trap. So Trap's on a warpath here. I mean, this is an all-in situation for the Protoss player. He's going to weasel his way up into the main ramp and try and choke up his opponent. Is Serral going to fall for the bait? I don't think he will. There isn't that much there anyways to really force him into poor trades. His lurkers have paid for themselves in just gold and then some. He's now got a lurker here in the natural dealing additional damage. All of the units on the opposite side of the map are there. It's 25 supply. Trap has tapped out, and Serral advances on to the grand finals from the bottom side of the bracket. 4-0 over his opponent in red.